The year is 331 BCE, and a young Macedonian king stands on the Mediterranean shore, surveying the coastline where the Nile Delta meets the sea. Alexander the Great has just conquered Egypt, adding the ancient kingdom to his growing empire, but he's not content with mere conquest. He envisions something unprecedented, a city that will become the greatest trading port in the world, a center of learning that will rival Athens, and a monument to Greek civilization in the heart of Africa. The location Alexander chooses seems impossible. A narrow strip of land between Lake Merodes and the Mediterranean, with nothing but a small fishing village called Rhacodes and a rocky island called Pharos nearby. But Alexander sees what others cannot: two natural harbors that could shelter the largest fleets, a position that controls all trade between East and West, and unlimited potential for greatness. He traces the city's boundaries with barley meal, and when birds eat the grain, his seers proclaim it a sign that the city will feed the world. Welcome to the story of the Lighthouse of Alexandria, the Pharos that stood for over 16 centuries and became so famous that its name became the word for lighthouse in dozens of languages. This is the tale of how Alexander's vision became reality under the Ptolemies, how the greatest architects and engineers of the ancient world created a tower over 330 feet tall, and how this beacon guided ships through treacherous waters while serving as a symbol of human knowledge conquering the darkness of ignorance. Our story begins with Alexander's death in 323 BCE, just 8 years after founding Alexandria. The young conqueror never saw his city grow beyond its initial foundations, but his vision lived on in the ambitions of his successors. When Alexander's generals carved up his empire, Egypt fell to Ptolemy I, one of the most capable and farsighted of the Diadochi. Ptolemy understood that controlling Egypt meant controlling the grain that fed the Mediterranean world, and controlling Alexandria meant controlling the sea routes that connected 3 continents. The city Alexander had envisioned began to take shape under Ptolemy's rule. Greek colonists arrived by the thousands, drawn by opportunities for trade, scholarship, and adventure. The harbor began filling with ships from across the known world: grain vessels from the Nile Valley, spice traders from India, lumber ships from Lebanon, and luxury goods from as far away as China. But the harbor that made Alexandria's fortune also posed deadly challenges to navigation. The coastline around Alexandria was notoriously treacherous. Low-lying shores offered few natural landmarks, while hidden reefs and shifting sandbars created invisible traps for unwary sailors. The prevailing winds could drive ships onto submerged rocks before crews realized their danger. Ancient maritime law recognized Alexandria's harbor as one of the most hazardous in the Mediterranean, requiring pilots with local knowledge to guide foreign vessels safely to port. The solution Ptolemy conceived was as audacious as the city itself: a lighthouse so tall it could be seen from far out at sea, so distinctive it could serve as a landmark for the entire eastern Mediterranean. This wouldn't be a simple beacon tower like those that already existed in smaller ports. This would be a monument that proclaimed Ptolemaic power while serving the practical needs of international commerce, a structure that combined engineering innovation with architectural magnificence on a scale never before attempted. The commission for this unprecedented project went to Sostratos of Cnidus, though his exact role remains debated by historians. Some sources identify him as the architect, others as the financial backer who funded the construction. What's certain is that Sostratos was a man of enormous wealth and sophisticated artistic taste, connected to the highest levels of Ptolemaic society. His name would be inscribed on the completed lighthouse, ensuring his immortality alongside the monument itself. The site chosen for the lighthouse was the eastern tip of Pharos Island, the rocky outcrop that gave the structure its name. This location offered several crucial advantages. It provided the highest natural elevation in the area. It was surrounded by deep water that allowed the foundation to be built on solid bedrock, and it commanded views in every direction across the harbor approaches. The island was connected to the mainland by the Heptastadion, a causeway that served both as a breakwater to protect the harbor and as a means of transporting building materials to the construction site. The engineering challenges were unprecedented in scale and complexity. No one had ever attempted to build a structure over 300 feet tall, roughly equivalent to a modern 25-story skyscraper. The foundation alone required innovative techniques to ensure stability in the face of earthquakes, storms, and the constant battering of Mediterranean waves. The superstructure would need to withstand wind loads that could topple lesser buildings while supporting enormous weight distributed across multiple levels. The architectural design that emerged from these practical constraints was revolutionary in its fusion of form and function. The lighthouse would rise in 3 distinct sections, each serving specific structural and aesthetic purposes. The base would be a massive rectangular platform, providing maximum stability and containing the storage areas, workshops, and living quarters needed to maintain the beacon. The middle section would be octagonal, creating a transition between the earthbound base and the celestial crown while offering optimal wind resistance. The top would be circular, housing the fire chamber and providing the perfect platform for the statue that would crown the entire structure. Construction began around 300 BCE and required unprecedented organization of labor and materials. The project consumed enormous quantities of limestone quarried from local deposits, along with granite imported from Aswan for decorative elements and structural reinforcement. The workforce included not only local Egyptian laborers, but also specialist craftsmen recruited from across the Greek world, stonemasons from the Cyclades Islands, engineers from Rhodes, bronze workers from Corinth, and artists from Athens. The construction process pushed ancient engineering to its limits. Each level of the lighthouse required precise mathematical calculation to ensure proper weight distribution and structural integrity. The transition from rectangular base to octagonal middle section demanded innovative stonework that had never been attempted on such a scale. The spiral ramp that allowed materials and fuel to be transported to the upper levels represented a masterpiece of 3-dimensional geometry. As the lighthouse rose higher, it became a wonder in itself, drawing visitors who came simply to witness the unprecedented construction project. Ancient sources describe crowds gathering to watch, as massive stone blocks were hoisted to seemingly impossible heights using systems of pulleys, levers, and human muscle power. The engineering innovations developed for the lighthouse influenced construction projects throughout the Hellenistic world, establishing new standards for monumental architecture. The completed lighthouse, dedicated around 280 BCE under Ptolemy II, exceeded even the most ambitious expectations. Standing over 330 feet tall, it was the second tallest structure in the world after the Great Pyramid, and far more complex in its internal organization. The base level contained workshops where the fuel for the beacon was prepared, storage areas for supplies, and quarters for the lighthouse keepers who maintained the structure. Wells provided fresh water, while elaborate drainage systems managed rainwater and prevented structural damage from moisture. The middle level housed the mechanical systems that made the lighthouse function. Here were the lifting devices used to transport fuel to the fire chamber, the mirrors and reflectors that amplified the beacon's light, and the storage areas for the specialized equipment needed to maintain navigation aids. Some ancient sources describe clockwork mechanisms that automated certain functions, though the exact nature of these devices remains mysterious. The fire chamber at the top of the lighthouse was the heart of the entire system. Here, a carefully maintained flame burned continuously, fueled by wood when available but more commonly by oil derived from various sources. The fire was surrounded by polished bronze mirrors that reflected and concentrated the light, sending a beam visible for miles across the Mediterranean. During daylight hours, these same mirrors could reflect sunlight, creating a brilliant flash that served as a daytime beacon for approaching ships. The lighthouse was crowned by a massive statue of Zeus Soter, Zeus the Savior, whose protective power was invoked for all who sailed the dangerous waters around Alexandria. This statue, estimated at over 20 feet tall, was visible from great distances and served as a religious as well as practical symbol. Sailors approaching Alexandria would first see Zeus's figure rising from the sea, then gradually make out the lighthouse structure below, and finally identify the harbor entrance that the beacon marked. The impact of the completed lighthouse extended far beyond its practical function as a navigation aid. The structure became the symbol of Alexandria itself, appearing on coins, mosaics, and official documents throughout the Ptolemaic period. Its image was copied in harbors across the Mediterranean, establishing the architectural template for lighthouse design that persisted for centuries. The very word, Pharos, entered multiple languages as the standard term for any lighthouse, ensuring the monument's linguistic immortality. But the lighthouse's most profound influence was cultural and intellectual. It represented the marriage of theoretical knowledge and practical application that characterized Alexandrian scholarship. The same city that housed the great library and museum also produced the world's most advanced navigation technology. The lighthouse stood as a physical manifestation of the Ptolemaic belief that human knowledge could illuminate the darkness, whether literal or metaphorical. The operation of the lighthouse required sophisticated organization and considerable expense. A permanent staff of keepers maintained the beacon, ensured adequate fuel supplies, and operated the mechanical systems. Pilots based at the lighthouse guided foreign ships through the harbor's hazards, while harbor officials collected the fees that funded the structure's maintenance. The lighthouse became the center of a complex bureaucracy that regulated Alexandria's maritime trade. The economic impact was transformative for the entire region. Ships that might previously have avoided Alexandria's treacherous approaches now arrived in growing numbers, attracted by the security the lighthouse provided. The harbor became a magnet for international commerce, drawing merchants from India, Arabia, Africa, and Europe. The customs duties collected from this expanded trade funded not only the lighthouse's operation, but also the cultural institutions that made Alexandria the intellectual capital of the ancient world. Ancient writers consistently ranked the lighthouse among the 7 wonders of the world, praising both its practical utility and its aesthetic magnificence. Unlike monuments that served primarily ceremonial functions, the lighthouse demonstrated daily its value to human civilization. Every ship that safely reached Alexandria's harbor was a testament to the monument's worth, Every life saved from the reefs justified its enormous cost. The lighthouse's design influenced religious as well as secular architecture. Some scholars argue that its three-tiered structure inspired the development of Islamic minaret design, particularly the distinctive profile of Cairene minarets. The combination of functional and symbolic elements established principles that influenced lighthouse construction well into the modern era. From the Pharos to the Statue of Liberty, monumental beacons have continued to serve as symbols of refuge and enlightenment. For over a millennium, the lighthouse stood essentially unchanged, a testament to the engineering skills of its builders. Regular maintenance kept the structure in excellent condition, while modifications adapted it to changing needs. Roman coins from the imperial period show the lighthouse much as Ptolemy's architects had designed it, confirming the durability of the original construction. The lighthouse weathered political upheavals with remarkable resilience. When Rome conquered Egypt in 30 BCE, the new rulers recognized the structure's strategic and economic importance, continuing to fund its operation. The lighthouse guided Roman grain ships that fed the capital, making it as valuable to the emperors as it had been to the Ptolemies. Christian rulers later adapted the pagan symbolism while maintaining the practical function, adding churches and religious imagery to the ancient structure. The first serious damage came from earthquakes in the 8th century CE, when seismic activity damaged the upper sections and reduced the lighthouse's height. Arab rulers undertook major repairs, adding a mosque to the top level and modifying the beacon system to incorporate new lighting technologies. These renovations demonstrated the continued importance of the lighthouse to Mediterranean trade and navigation. Medieval Arab geographers provided detailed descriptions of the lighthouse that supplement ancient Greek and Roman sources. These accounts describe a structure still recognizable as Sestratos's original design, but modified by centuries of repair and renovation. The basic three-tiered form remained, but architectural details reflected the cultural preferences of successive rulers. Islamic geometric patterns adorned surfaces once decorated with Greek mythological figures, while the Zeus statue gave way to more abstract symbolic elements. The lighthouse's gradual decline began in the 12th century as a series of earthquakes weakened its structure. The Great Earthquake of 1303 caused major damage to the upper levels, while the earthquake of 1323 effectively ended the lighthouse's function as a navigation aid. By this time, changes in harbor configuration and the rise of alternative trading routes had reduced Alexandria's importance, making expensive repairs economically unjustifiable. The final destruction came in the 1480s, when Sultan Qaitbay ordered the lighthouse's remaining stones to be used in constructing a fortress on the same site. This practical recycling ensured that the lighthouse's materials continued to serve defensive purposes, but it marked the end of one of humanity's most enduring monuments. The fortress that rose from the lighthouse's ruins stands today, a reminder of what once occupied the site. Modern archaeology has attempted to reconstruct the lighthouse's appearance and understand its engineering principles. Marine excavations in Alexandria's harbor have recovered sculptural fragments, architectural elements, and foundation stones that provide clues about the original structure. These discoveries confirm ancient literary descriptions while revealing details about construction techniques and decorative programs. Computer modeling based on archaeological evidence and ancient descriptions has produced increasingly sophisticated reconstructions of the lighthouse. These models suggest that the structure was even more complex than previously imagined, with internal systems that rivaled modern lighthouse technology in their sophistication. The combination of mirrors, reflectors, and fuel systems created a beacon whose range and reliability weren't surpassed until the development of electric lighting. The lighthouse's influence on modern architecture extends well beyond lighthouse design. The principle of combining practical function with symbolic meaning, demonstrated so successfully at Alexandria, became fundamental to public architecture in democratic societies. From national capitals to university campuses, modern buildings continue to employ the lighthouse's strategy of using height, prominence, and symbolic decoration to communicate public values. The scientific legacy is equally significant. The lighthouse represented one of humanity's first systematic attempts to solve navigation problems through engineering rather than simply accepting natural limitations. The research and development that went into creating effective reflector systems, fuel management techniques, and structural engineering solutions established methodologies that influenced later technological development. Perhaps most importantly, the lighthouse embodied the Alexandrian ideal that knowledge should serve practical human needs. Unlike monuments built purely for royal glorification, the lighthouse justified its enormous cost through daily service to mariners from every nation. This model of public investment in infrastructure that benefits international commerce established principles that continue to guide modern economic policy. The story of the Lighthouse of Alexandria is ultimately about the power of human ingenuity to overcome natural obstacles. The treacherous waters that surrounded Alexandria were a given. The dangerous reefs, shifting sandbars, and lack of natural landmarks couldn't be changed. But human intelligence could create artificial landmarks, develop new navigation technologies, and establish systems that made the impossible merely difficult. The lighthouse stood for over 16 centuries because it met genuine human needs while inspiring the imagination. Sailors depended on its beacon for their lives, merchants relied on its guidance for their fortunes, and scholars studied its engineering for their understanding. The structure succeeded because it combined the practical and the symbolic, the immediate and the eternal, the local and the universal. Today, as we develop new navigation technologies and face new challenges in global commerce, the lighthouse reminds us that the most enduring solutions are those that serve human needs while inspiring human aspirations. The beacon that once guided ancient ships through dangerous waters continues to illuminate our understanding of what becomes possible when vision, resources, and skill combine in service of the common good. The light may be extinguished, but the lighthouse's lesson endures. In a world full of hazards and uncertainties, human knowledge and cooperation can create beacons that guide us safely home.